Tartarian Christianity, the Revelation. This is episode 2. If you missed the first episode, go back and view it. And now we dug into Chinggis Khan or Genghis Khan and his Christian roots, which seem to have a one-to-one correlation with the Apocalypse of Ezra, or For Esdras, as this book is called, which describes when the Tartarians went to Arzareth, and that they would dwell in Arzareth until the last time. And now we're digging into Chinggis Khan and his empire, as it seems to align with the book of For Esdras, that this may have been the quote-unquote last times as described in Revelation and the book of For Esdras. So Chinggis Khan, as we left off last time, has passed away and passed his empire on to his first son, Hokata Khan, who succeeded in the empire, was a man of very much valor and wisdom, which made him very beloved of the Tartarians, who were always faithful and obedient to him. So he thought about what is the best manner that he might subdue all of Asia, and proceeded to the Iron Gate, which Alexander had built at the foot of the Caucasus, and he raised it, lest it might hinder his return. So he has evidently found the gate that Alexander had built, which seems to be a part of the Great Wall, and he smashes that gate down, so he doesn't have any hindrance when he's trying to return to Tartaria. And he, desiring to subdue all of Asia, called his 3 sons and gave them each a great army. Jochi, the eldest, was sent westward to the Tigris, BLAEU to the north, and Chagode was sent to the south. So divided Asia, or Tartaria, among his 3 sons. So Hokata Khan called BLAEU and gives him 30,000 Tartarian soldiers called Tamachi, or conquerors, and he sends them out to conquer and to not make them stay in any place until they come to the kingdom of Turkey, and to see if they could withstand the king of Turkey, who was held the mightiest of the princes in Asia. And the Sultan, hearing that the Tartarians were coming, was very much afraid. He got all the mercenaries he could, and he got barbarians and Latins and anyone he could to help him out. And he even sent to his neighbors, promising them many favors and benefits if they would assist him. And so he assembled a great number of men, and he went towards the place where the Tartarians made their abode. And he found nothing, astonished at his approach. And it sounds like an ambush, for they manually gave him battle at a place called Kusdrak, and they overthrew the army of the Turks, and the Tartarians won the kingdom of Turkey in the year 1244. Now, Turkey is a very important area, and it's interesting that Hokata Khan, the son of Genghis Khan, told them to go conquer Turkey, but once they get to Turkey, they basically could stop and stay there. Now, in the book of Revelation, John wrote this letter, the book of Revelation, to the 7 churches in the province of Asia, which seems, like I've said, to the 7 churches in the province of Tartaria. And he wrote it to 7 specific churches. The church of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. So those, he is writing it to 7 churches specifically. And the common interpretation of Revelation is that John was not writing to these actual 7 churches, that he was, that these are real churches that existed in those times, but he was using them as a metaphor, essentially, and that the churches, the common interpretation I've heard is that these churches represent different churches throughout the historical time. But they are 7 churches. And if we go and look those up, to find a map of where they're at, of course, they're all in Turkey. Here we have Turkey, and the 7 churches that John was writing to are these 7 churches right here. They're all on the western side of the country of Turkey. Each one of these actually has a church there and a ruins. I didn't see any star forts nearby, but this is the church of Pergamum. Here's a photo of the church. So there is some kind of ruins still around there, and definitely the footprint on the land. But zooming out from Pergamum, let's go to the next church. Here we got Thyatira, which is in the middle of a city, but there is still some ruins preserved down here right in the middle of the city. This is about what seems to be left of that church, but something's there still. Next one down here we have Smyrna. Smyrna, once again, smack in the middle of a city. Not much seems to be here, but ruins surrounded by the city. So here's what's left of that church. And heading east from Smyrna, we get Sardis. Looks like some orchards and vegetation surrounding the Sardis ruins. Alright, we get a little bit better structure here. More than a few columns laying around. And moving to the southwest to Ephesus. Here we go. Quite the ruins left over here at Ephesus. And taking a closer look, we see what may be considered and described as Tartarian architecture. A lot of detail definitely preserved on these old stones. And the Church of Ephesus may also be the Basilica of St. John, which is just right over here. And we see the huge ruins over here at the Basilica of St. John. So there's a photo of that area. Now leaving Ephesus and going to the northeast here to Philadelphia. This one's not as easy to see, especially on the Google map image, but the Philadelphia church is supposed to be right around here. I just can't make it out. I guess there's some pieces of it left over, maybe blending in with the trees. So there's a photo of that area, and supposedly these structures would be what was left over from that church. And lastly, south of Philadelphia, we have Laodicea. The ruins of Laodicea, those are quite apparent here on the map. A lot of interesting things to look at. Maybe just amphitheaters where they could have their sermons and preaching and whatnot. But here's a photo from that area, Laodicea. And the reason I wanted to look at each one of the church and the location of it on a map is, well, the book of Revelation is written to these 7 churches. John was either talking to these guys or using these 7 churches as a metaphor. But keep these 7 churches and their location in mind as we're reading about Genghis Khan, and realize that the Tartarians have came into Turkey and now have conquered Turkey. They're occupying this land, and at this point, 1244, we could call this whole area of Turkey as Tartarian land because they've conquered it and run out the king of Turkey. And definitely an important area if you want to retake the Holy Land, because Jerusalem and Israel are right here. So having a dominion over Turkey is definitely going to be a key component to coming down and taking back the city of Jerusalem. So the Tartarians won the kingdom of Turkey in the year 1244. And now this area is theirs. And here we find again that if John was writing his letter to the churches in Turkey, that fast forward to the year 1244, he may just be writing his letter once again to the Tartarians who now hold the area of Turkey. And after a little time, Hokata Khan died and his son succeeded the empire. He was called Gino Khan, but his life was short, and after him succeeded a kinsman of his, Mango Khan, who was very great power and subdued many provinces And at length, with a great spirit, he went into the Cathian Sea to take a certain land. And while he was besieging, the inhabitants of those parts, being very subtle and ingenious, sent certain divers secretly underwater, who continued so long underneath of the ship that Genghis Khan was on, that they made many holes in it, and the water came into the ship, and none of them observed it, and they couldn't stop the leaks. And then the ship sunk, and Genghis Khan was drowned therein. So I don't know how they did that in the year 1244. They had divers who went underwater and stayed under the boat for a very long time, drilling holes in it. I mean, that almost sounds like somebody who has oxygen tanks. And the people of 1244, I can't imagine holding their breath and going down there with some kind of a hand drill and drilling holes in it without any of the people on the boat seeing what was going on. This almost sounds like they've got some kind of scuba gear and maybe power-driven drill to get the holes. Hard to say. But after Genghis Khan was drowned, the Tartarians returned home and chose his brother Kublai Khan for their emperor, and he reigned over them for 42 years. He became a Christian, and he founded a certain city called Jons in the kingdom of Cathay, which is reported to be greater than Rome. Now, Rome is touted to be the greatest city in the world, and they even, Rome wasn't built in a day and all this. They're going to say, of course, that Rome is the greatest city in the world, but not according to this account. And to this account, the kingdom of Cathay held a city called Jons, which was greater than Rome. And in the city, Genghis Khan dwelled there until his dying day. And I tried to find the city of Jons on a map. No luck with that. Even looking at this map of Cathay, I didn't see any cities around here called Jons. So no luck locating it on a map yet. If you happen to find a map with Jons, let me know. I did find a different text that talks about it, though. This one's from Marquis Pauli Veneti. And it talks here, although in Latin, about in Tartary, where there is the city of Jons in the kingdom of Cathay, and it's a city that's greater than Rome. A small translation of this block of text is here. However, the Tartars who had come with him, as they were returning, the brother of the Lord had gathered Kublai Khan, and he reigned for 42 years. So this is Kublai Khan, who reigned for 42 years. The Christians, and they laid foundation to the city, which is called Jons, in the kingdom of Cathay, who is greater than Rome, it is said to be. And the kingdom of the Tartarians go on to conquer a lot of kingdoms here. Turkestan, they go to Cumania, Hungary. They went to the kingdom of Russia and conquered it. The land of Gazaria. The kingdom of Bulgaria and the kingdom of Hungary. And afterwards the Tartarians went to parts of Germany. And they were not successful there. The Tartarians were denied passage at a certain bridge. And Baido Khan, increased with fury, commanded that all should pass through the water instead of taking the bridge. And he himself was the first that entered, exposing himself and his followers to apparent danger or death. For such was the breadth of the river and the violence of the stream that the horses were wearied away before they could get to the other side of the river. And when they realized they couldn't cross the river that way, they returned to Russia and Cumania, which they had formerly conquered. And they never since have the Tartarians attempted to go back into Germany. And Kangadai Khan, with his Tartarians, his father gave him road to the south into India. And they found many deserts, mountains, and dry lands not inhabited. So it sounds like they're going down in India and possibly Egypt. And they find they could not pass that way. And having lost many people and horses and other beasts, they turned to the west, where he went to his brother Joshi and let him know what had happened. He basically just found a desert and it was too hot. And so his brother gave him part of that country. and being content with their portions, they lived peaceably and quietly together. And the successor of Jochi now lived and is called Barak. Wait, that sounded like an old president. Let's call him Barach instead. In the year of the Lord, 1253, Hathan, the king of Armenia, seeing the Tartarians had subdued all kingdoms, countries, and lands, and even the kingdom of Turkey, taking counsel of the wise, he resolved to go in person to the emperor of the Tartarians. And he went out beyond the Iron Gate, and he came to Alamech, where Mango Khan, the emperor, resided, who rejoiced much at the coming of the king of Armenia, because other than the coming of Genghis Khan over the mountain Belgian, no other great prince had come to meet him. And therefore he received the king of Armenia and entertained him with much honor and love, and gave unto him some of the greatest persons about him to attend, and did him many favors. And the king of Armenia, with good deliberation, made 7 petitions. First, he desired that the emperor of Tartary and all his people should be baptized in the Christian faith, leaving other sects. Secondly, that there might be a perpetual peace and friendship established between the Christians and the Tartarians. Thirdly, that all countries which the Tartarians either had conquered or should conquer, the churches and the churchmen, whether secular or religious, might be freed and exempt from all their servitude and payments. Fourth, that he would deliver them the Holy Land and the holy sepulchre of the Lord out of the hands of the Muslims, and restore them to the Christians. Firstly, that he would endeavor with the destruction of the king of Baldach, who was the head and chief doctor of the sect of Mohammedanism, or the sect of Islam. Mahometism is, in English, Mohammedanism, a reference to the Muslim religion. And Mango Khan, having considered the petitions of the king of Armenia, returned his answer that we will accept all your requests made, and will cause them, God willing, to be duly accomplished. First, I myself, being emperor and lord of the Tartarians, will be baptized in the faith of the Christians, and wish and advise all my subjects to do the same. Yet we're not going to force any to do it. They have free will if they want to be baptized and join Christianity. And second, we will agree that there will be a perpetual peace between the Tartarians and the Christians, and all churches of Christians and clergymen, whether secular or religious, shall enjoy the privilege of immunity and liberty and exemption throughout the dominion of our empire, that we shall not molest them in any kind of ways. So it sounds like there is somewhat of religious freedom, or at least the churches don't have to pay dues to the king or anything like that. And touching the matter of the Holy Land, we say that if we can, we will willingly go there in person for the reverence we bear to our Lord Jesus Christ. But because of a lot of things happening at the moment, we need to stay where we're at. And so we will have our brother Halun take on this accomplishment for the freeing of the city of Jerusalem and all of the Holy Land out of the hands of the pagans, and restoring it to the Christians. And after that, Mango Khan went forward and was baptized according to the hands of a certain bishop who was chancellor of the king of Armenia, and all of his household, with many other great persons of both sexes. And then he made the choice that he would accompany his brother Halun to restore the Holy Land to the hands of the Christians. So they passed over the great river of Physon and invaded countries and lands everywhere. In less than 6 months, they easily subdued the whole kingdom of Persia, because it was without a ruler. And there was a certain impregnable castle called Tigado, which was so well furnished with all kinds of necessary provision, and so strongly built that they feared they wouldn't be able to assault it. And Halun commanded his captains to take with him 10,000 of the Tartarians and siege the castle until he had taken it. And they remained at the siege thereof for a space of 7 years, both winter and summer. So they were able to take the castle Tigado, and through the mercy of Jesus Christ, the king of Armenia came joyfully home to his own country after that. Now that castle Tigado appears to be right here. So they had already taken Turkey, and the castle that they couldn't take for 7 years seems that it's right over here. And it is quite interesting to look at this mountain peak. It at first you wouldn't think there was any castle here at all, but you can see little remnants of some pieces of it. And it seems it's this place called Gurdka, which was a castle and a fortified mountain defended by a triple ring of fortifications at its foot, making the citadel impregnable to direct military assault. It says here that Gurdka resisted Mongol invasion in 1253 AD for 17 years, becoming the last Nizari stronghold in Persia to fall. So this lines up with the account that we're reading. There's a close-up image of it. You can see a little bit left on top and some kind of structure over here, but not too much really left of it. And looking at Google Earth, it almost looks like it got melted by, I don't know, maybe the castle got knocked over and the bricks all fell down, but it almost looks like this thing got melted. And it looks like leftovers of a volcano, some volcano lava running down or something like that. And comparing this sort of almost melted rock look and comparing it to, the other mountain peaks around, you don't really see this kind of melted mass look on these other nearby mountain peaks. So I don't know if that, maybe that's just the way the rock was, but maybe, fire from heaven or something like that came down and destroyed this whole castle and melted it. Either way, not much left over of it, but certainly sounds like quite the castle and took 7 or 17 years to overcome. So now that Alun had order in the kingdom of Persia and conquered all of Persia, and he went to a certain province near Armenia called Sorlok. And at the beginning of the winter, he besieged Baldach, in which the king resided. And he was the chief master and doctor of the irreligious sect of Islam, Mohammedanism. And reinforcing his army with 30,000 Tartarians who went into the kingdom of Turkey. He assaulted the city by the shore, and he took it without any great difficulty or delay. And the city of Baldach seems to be ancient Babylon, or at least a city very near Babylon. This, of course, here we can see it's identified as Babylon, as it is here in this book, the Ludolf von Schumann's Description of the Holy Land and the Way Thither, written in 1350, ancient Babylon or Baldach. In eastern Chaldea, there is an exceedingly fair and noble city, powerful beyond measure, and at this day it is the best of all cities in the east, named Baldach. It stands on the banks of the Euphrates, one of the rivers of paradise, and they who dwell there say they believe that half a mile or thereabouts from it stood ancient Babylon. This is also proved by the vast ruins and immense piles of buildings of diverse sorts and of stones, which have a strange aspect from a distance, especially at the place where the Tower of Babel stood, where the confusion of tongues arose. Another proof that this ancient Babylon lies in an impassable road between the ruins and the city of Baldach. You can't pass it because of venomous creatures, and there's many other signs that show how ancient Babylon stood there, and the inhabitants do most firmly believe, because of those venomous creatures, that ancient Babylon was removed and called by another name, to wit Baldach. In this city of Baldach there are now the richest and best merchants under heaven. Neither is there any place in the east so much and so many different kinds of merchandise as there. In this city used to dwell the king, that is the successor of Mohammed, to whom the Muslims render obedience in all things, even as do the Christians to the Pope, the successor of St. Peter. I will tell you something about the loss of the city of Baldach, according to what I have read thereof in the Chronicles and the histories of the kings of Armenia, and have heard from right truthful knight, who was there at the time, in the year of the Lord, 1268, when the Tartars had conquered all the kingdoms of the east. Iko, the king of Armenia, and his own accord proceeded to the great Khan, the emperor of the Tartars, to visit him. His 4 chief captains, each who had 30,000 Tartars underneath of him, besieged Baldach without ceasing, and they took the city on the 13th day, slew all the inhabitants, both young men and old alike, and won such rich spoils of gold, silver, precious stones, and other kinds of wealth, as no one ever was heard of taken in any city whatsoever. And there was found in Baldach so much treasure and riches as it would scarcely be believed to be in all the world. And this city of Baldach was taken in the year 1258. So when Halun had conquered the city of Baldach, he caused the king to be brought to him, and all of his treasure laid before him. And then he asked him whether he had been lord of all that treasure. And when the king affirmed it, he asked him why he hadn't made use of his treasure in getting aid from his neighbors and hiring mercenary soldiers to defend him and his country from the power of the Tartarians. And his answer was that he thought his own people would have been sufficient to defend against the Tartarians. And then Halun said to the king, "You are the chief doctor and teacher of all that believe the deceiving doctrine of Muhammad, and you have received rewards and gifts from all of them. Therefore, such and so precious a master must be fed with no other meat, but with these precious things, which thou hast loved and kept so carefully, all which we give you for your sustenance." And so he commanded that the king should be shut into his chamber, and that his pearl and gold should be set before him, that he might eat as much as he would, but he would have no other meat or drink to be given to him. And by this means the miserable wretched ended his life in a miserable manner, and there has been no other king in Baldach after him. That is brutal. How comes it, wretched man, that you have such great treasure that I fear even to look upon, and with your might you have overcome the whole world, and ought to have brought it under your yoke? Why then did you not hire enough troops to defend your city? And the king answered, "Evil counsel brought this ruin upon me, for they said that even women could easily defend the city against the Tartars." Then Halun said, "Behold, you are Muhammad's successor and the teacher of his law, and I dare not hurt you, neither is it fitting that you should live or eat like other men, for out of your mouth proceeds the law and the doctrine of Muhammad." And he ordered him to be placed in a fair place, and poured before him gold and silver and precious stones and pearls, and saying to him, "The mouth from where proceeds so great law and doctrine, it befits you to eat such precious food as this." So the king was shut up in the palace, and on the 12th day was found dead of hunger. And after him there's been no king, no successor of Muhammad, who has arisen in Baldach even to this day. Near Baldach, a distance of 4 days' journey, is another city, which once was called Susa, wherein Abahasuerus flourished. This city, which was once called Susa, is now called Tharius. And in this city there is a dry tree, whereof it is said that the emperor of the Romans is fated to hang his shield thereon. The people of the city say that no Jew can live or sojourn therein. Oh, is that some anti-Semitism right there? Of course, the Jews not being Tartarians, but rather the Israelites, the tribes of Benjamin and Judah, who became one tribe, which was called the Jews. He gave the providence to his captains and his rulers, and gave them a charge that Christians everywhere should be treated lovingly and preferred to the government of the castles and cities, and that the Muslims to be held under straight subjection. And Halun had a wife called Duo Koskaro, who descended from the kings who came from the east, who were guided by the star of the nativity of our Lord. So the three wise men who brought the frankincense and myrrh to King Jesus when he was born, his wife descended from him. Now, Halun is the king of the Tartarians, and so his wife is definitely a Tartarian. And here we can figure out that this Tartarian woman called Duokoskaro descended from the kings who seen baby Jesus at the nativity. So once again, confirmation that the three wise men who seen baby Jesus were Tartarians. And her family, Duokoskaro, was a most devout Christian with great means of destroying the temples of the Muslims and prohibiting the ceremonies of Muhammad, and raising their temples to the ground, and brought the Muslims into subjection that they dare not show their heads. So after that, Halun rested for a year, sent for the king of Armenia to meet him in the city of Robes, because they intended to go towards the Holy Land that they might restore it to the Christians. So they had a conference and how they were going to take back the Holy Land. And he advised them that because the king of Halapi ruled over the kingdom of Syria, in which the city of Jerusalem was seated, the way to get to the Holy Land was to first besiege the city of Halapi, as that was the chief city in Syria, of which he had won it, and it was not difficult for him to subdue all the rest of the country. And when they besieged the city of Halapi, or Aleppo, they found that it was great strength and well-walled and inhabited, and therefore they used mines to get underground. And with slings and other engines, they besieged it so straitly and assaulted it so manfully on every side that it seemed impregnable. Yet in the space of 9 days they obtained it. In the city they found such an incredible store of wealth as would hardly be believed. Yet there was a castle in the midst of the city which held out for 11 days after the city was taken, at which length it was won by undermining. So the city of Halapi, and afterwards the kingdom of Syria, was taken by Halu in the year of the Lord, 1240. Now the 1240 date is supposedly wrong. It says here 1260. So supposedly the Syria was taken in 1260. But both Latin and Italian say 1240. I'm not sure what's... seems like 1260 would be the correct date. As just prior to this, the city of Baldach was taken in the year 1258. So 2 years later, they've taken Syria. So these Tartarians are closing in on Jerusalem and the Holy Land. They've taken Turkey. They've come over here into Iran, where Castle Tigado is at. They've taken this whole area. Now they've come over to Syria. They've taken Syria. So they're now on the doorstep of Jerusalem. And after that, Halun settled the affairs of those cities and countries which he had won. And next he intended to go into Jerusalem and free the Holy Land from the pagans and restore it to the Christians. But there came to him a messenger on the third day who brought news that the Tartarian Empire was vacant by the death of his brother Mango Khan, and that his return to Tartaria was earnestly expected to be the successor of Tartaria. And this report made him very sorrowful. So he could no longer proceed in person into Jerusalem, but he left 10,000 Tartars to keep the kingdom of Syria under the command of a captain called Gioboga. And he gave them order that he should conquer the Holy Land, restore it to the Christians. So thus, leaving his son at Taurus, he hastened eastwards and to go a great journey to go back to Tartaria. Now, so far, the Tartarians and the sons of Genghis Khan have been working hard to further the kingdom of Christianity and to take back the Holy Land for the Christians. Just almost as prophesied in the book of Revelation, when the land opens the second seal, another horse came out, a fiery red one, and it was given the power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. And to him was given a large sword, So, there's also a third seal that is opened, and that's a black horse, and holding in his hand is a pair of scales. So it sounds like from the seals being opened that there's some good, and then there's some bad, and we'll find the same account with these Tartarians. Not all of them are going to continue to serve God and to be Christians. But certainly these sons of Genghis Khan have carried out what appears to be the opening of the first seal. He saw the white horse, the rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. And these Tartarians are seeing the white horse. They are riders on a horse with a bow. They were given a crown, and they are conquerors bent on conquest. In fact, they've taken essentially all of Asia and even down into India and Africa. And they've taken Turkey and Iran and Syria. And the next step here is to move into Israel and take back the holy city. So wrapping up episode 2 right here, we'll get episode 3 kicked off with the third chapter and seeing what happens with the rest of these Tartarians, and then try to figure out where they finally went and why do the Tartarians seem to have completely disappeared off the face of the earth. Maybe if we keep digging, we'll figure out why there are abandoned cities all over the earth circa 1800. The beginnings of the 1800s, we find just these abandoned cities with almost ruins around them. These massive cities, seemingly completely abandoned. This one being Istanbul. Here it is again, buildings the size which is hardly comprehensible, and yet there's one person in sight. Nobody's around. Standing on what seems to be a very old and abandoned road that doesn't seem to be used anymore. Where are the people who inhabit this building? Why have these cities gone to complete ruin and abandoned? Here we just got cows left over standing around a city. One carriage and one man. Other than that, just junk and ruins and what seems to be abandoned cities. So we'll keep digging into the history of the Tartarians, comparing these historical accounts with what we read about in the book of Revelation, and continue our search for truth. Thanks once again for watching, and stay tuned for episode 3.